So it's all for play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hello, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Pomegranate podcast. I don't know about you, but I heard about 7 different iterations of our theme tune there, and I have no idea where the hell it came from. But anyway, yeah, said I'd jump on today because it seems with great certainty, some of the world's big transfer names are linking us with Ross Barkley today. And in more than just a spurious fashion, a lot of people are, Matt Law and Fabrizio Romano, are reporting that Aston Villa are in very advanced negotiations with Ross Barkley. So wanted to pop on. I wanted to do a little view of him. I know that there's going to be a ton of people who will absolutely hate this transfer. I suppose I'm going to start this firstly with the age profile of Ross Barkley. And the profile of this being somebody that Unai Emery wants to bring in on maybe a free transfer. I'm going to have one of the Luton guys on to talk to us about this tomorrow, because I do feel that this is pretty advanced from what I've heard since the news is broken today. I do feel that this is pretty advanced and far down the line. But I want to talk about the age profile of Ross Barkley first. And don't be surprised if Unai Emery signs players that are 28, 29, 30. He's done it at every single club he's been at. Well, sorry, he's done it at Sevilla and done it via Villarreal. And I think they're the barometers for us to look at really here. One of the best ever signings he made, or one of the best ever signings he made for Villarreal, was Etienne Capoue at 31 or 32 years of age to get him into Villarreal, and he absolutely transformed that midfield for him the way that Unai wanted him to play, because he saw him have a small bit of discipline in there, or he saw his game had switched and had shifted from being that kind of more of an attack-minded midfielder to coming back into more of an 8/6 as opposed to an 8/10 as his legs were beginning to go. He showed a bit more discipline in midfield, and he just had a footballing brain where he was able to pass the ball from deeper. Etienne Capoue came in there. He also played Etienne Capoue as a wide right midfielder as well. He brought in players along the lines of Raul Albiol, he had players at Villarreal like Raul Albiol, like Daniel Parejo as well. These guys were older players, but were able to marshal games, shut games down. They were able to do things, come on in games and do specific tasks for Unai Emery. And I'm not surprised if we're going to be linked with players that are going to be 27, 28, 29, 30, or even 31 or 32-year-old players, because bringing experience into this team, I don't think is a bad thing. And I don't think they're all going to be like that. So the signings aren't all going to be that way. Don't misquote me or don't misunderstand me in anything like that. But I can understand why Unai Emery, because he's always wanted to do it, bring in more mature players. And what I mean by is footballing mature players who played in different systems and come in and can do certain things really well. He's always liked to do that at the clubs that he's been with, specifically clubs he's had success in Europe at, i.e. Sevilla and Villarreal. So I just wanted to address that. I've always said this as well, that I think that Unai Emery has been searching for the right 30-plus striker, and that's not 30-plus goals, that's age 30-plus striker to come in and to maybe do a job with Aston Villa, and I wouldn't be surprised. Last year, I suppose I can say the name out now because it was because the season is gone. I don't think he's going to sign for Aston Villa, but I think in January they were doing a lot of work on Christophe Piatek as well from it's Fiorentina, I think he was playing with at the time. 29 or 30-year-old Polish striker, just a bit of a bigger body to come in there. That never got over the line in January. I don't know how far down the line it was, but it was a name that was mentioned to me before. So that kind of age profile to help in Europe and to help to bring those guys on in games whereby maybe we are 2-0 up and we're looking to close a game out, or we're looking to shut a game down, or we're looking for or we've got injuries in the squad and we're looking to pad the squad out with some of those players as well. I don't think all of them will be like that, as I say, but I think one or two will be of that ilk. But anyway, getting on to Ross Barkley. as I say, a lot of people will hold ill memory of him or ill feeling of him from the time he was here previously. A really strange year for him to come in. It was the year where nobody was in stadia, and it was also the year where he started like a train, like an absolute house on fire. He was absolutely superb from August to November or August to October when he got injured. Then he got injured, and then he never fully hit 100% or hit high pace again afterwards. I remember on this podcast, Paddy was very frustrated with him at the end of his tenure. There was one time when he was substituted and he went off the opposite side of the field and it took him ages to walk around the field. And I remember Paddy losing his life over that in the podcast afterwards. So some of the body language things were incorrect there. Also, we had a lot of players that were showing poor body language towards the end of that season. Morgan Sanson and so on as well. As that season went on and then carried on into next year. But Ross Barkley's kind of gone, and he's rebuilt his career since the time he's been at Aston Villa. And I suppose I say that kind of very open to argument from people to ask whether he has rebuilt his career. But I would argue that he has rebuilt his career, and he's done it the hard way, because I think what he needed to do for himself was he needed to prove that he could stay injury free, number one. And secondly, he needed to prove that he could go and he could play out of the limelight. And what I mean by that is, at Everton, he was the man at Everton. Ross Barkley at Everton was their Lord and Savior for a good period of time. Whatever an Everton fan says to you, they absolutely loved Ross Barkley at Everton. Then he moves on to Chelsea, and he plays some very meaningful football for Chelsea. He plays in European football. His Champions League experience playing with Chelsea. Plays in European football, and he kind of then he flops between flip flops between being in the team and then also being part of the just a squad player, a European type player as well, coming in European games, and that's cool too. He has that experience, should I say, of playing European football and coming off the bench and not being a full-time starter. Then he goes to Nice. This is the really interesting one. Jim Ratcliffe's Nice. Or Ineos owned Nice, should I say, at the time. He goes and he plays with Nice, and he plays pretty well for Nice. Scores 4 goals, 27 games after signing. Played with Villa, played 24 league games, should I say, with Villa the year before. And scored 3 goals. Then he goes to Nice, and he plays 28 games for Nice and scores 4 goals. And that's coming off the back of 2 seasons at Chelsea, where he only played 17 games in 2 seasons for Chelsea. Prior to that, he was a mainstay in the team. He's played 79 games in total, scoring 10 goals for Chelsea. That's dating back to the 2018 season. So, Ross Barkley, he went through that blip in his career from 2020, I suppose, really, to when he signed with Nice in 2022. So he went through that blip, those 3 years of a blip, 2020, 2021, 2021, 2022, and then the 2020 and 2021 season, as I mentioned, when he signed for Aston Villa as well. There, those 2 years there where he played, he was kind of playing injured, and he was in and out of the team. Goes to Nice, plays 28 games, scores 4 goals, and then comes in. Then he's kind of sitting on the stoop for a while, and Luton pick him up and give him a chance in the Premier League. And when he went to Luton, he ended up being a completely different type of player. I've watched 4 of his games for Luton before doing this podcast, and when you watch him playing for Luton, and even when he played against us, he was a different type of player to what he was when he played for us in 2020, 2021. And that's the intriguing part of this from a Ross Barkley point of view. We know when Ross Barkley played for us in 2020, 2021, he was playing behind Ollie Watkins. He was like that support striker, that number 10 playing in behind Ollie Watkins. And he was like, his defensive output was absolutely useless. It just wasn't there. Wasn't asked, but it was useless because he wasn't asked to do it. He certainly wasn't asked to do it. He was asked to get that ball and to drive at defenses and carry the ball. When he went to Nice, and specifically, I suppose, when he went to Luton as well, he was kind of a bit more withdrawn. He was definitely an 8-6 in that role. And it's the interesting part for me is, and when I look at an Etienne Capoue type, kind of moving back in midfield as opposed to being a 10/8 going to an 8/6, I think you can kind of make the argument that he's that this year in the Premier League, he's shown that he can play in that position. And I'll talk about it in a moment why, and I'll show you my stats sheet as well. Now, granted, a lot of you guys here are saying, this guy's going to come in. He's going to be a squad filler. He's not going to oust John McGinn. He's not going to oust Douglas Luiz. Well, and if he does, fucking great, because that means that we have a brilliant player on the bench, and we have someone performing better than that brilliant player. So that's fantastic. Will he be in there with a Yuri Tielemans type? I think he'll be in there with a Yuri Tielemans type option player from the bench. Absolutely, 100%. And it's a minimal output from a signing point of view. He's currently rumoured to be on about 29 to 30,000 at Luton at the minute. He's 30 years of age. He turned 30 on the 5th of December, just gone. He'll be 31 during the course of this season. I think if Villa are signing him, they're looking at maybe a 2-year deal with a potential option, depending on what his injury history is like. There's argument as well. The Luton guys who are coming on tomorrow will be able to clarify this. There's a lot of people saying that he's available on a free transfer, and that there's clauses if the team get relegated. The Luton guys are pretty certain that that's not the case, going by what Rob Edwards has said. So we will get more clarity on that in a moment as well. Or not in a moment, late tomorrow when those guys do come on, and that will be an earlier show tomorrow. It'll be around, I think it's going to be around 10:45 or 11 a.m. tomorrow. So come watch that as well if you're around here doing nothing, because I want to get Luton's fans' perspective on this. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my stat sheet in a moment. I'm going to talk about him statistically, and I'm going to look at him against our midfielders this year and his output. I'm going to specifically put him up there with Yuri Tielemans and Yuri Tielemans' output. The fact that Yuri Tielemans has been a utility guy, played behind the Ollie Watkins at times, and also played back in the 8 and the 6 role as well. So I want to look at him specifically in there. Does he come in there and does he, I'm not going to say compete with the Tielemans, but are we looking like maybe we go with that box midfield at times, and maybe the two of them are on the field at some stage? He also brings a bit of height into that midfield at 6'2", which is something that we don't have, does Ross Barkley. And then what I want to do is I want to look at Ross Barkley in comparison to Ross Barkley in 2021 at Aston Villa, and just see where we can see potential changes in the player in a moment. But yeah, so let's talk about it here. Someone's asking me, did he play in the Europa with Nice? I can't remember. Is the answer. No, he didn't, actually. I'm looking at it here. He didn't play in Europe for Nice that season. They were in Europe, and it looks like he didn't play for Nice in Europe that season. No, played 28 games, scoring 4 goals. Now, then again, I don't know when he signed for Nice, the 4th of September. Yeah, so he signed the 4th of September, but he didn't play in Europe for Nice that year. For whatever reason, I'm not 100% sure. So Ross Barkley, as all of you guys know, let's take a little look at him and how he looks in comparison to some of our strikers. So he's 6'2", he's right-footed, as I say. He was born the 5th of December, just gone. Looking at his heat map there, one of the things that absolutely strikes me and jumps straight off the page to me, and I don't have the comparison for what his heat map was when he was at Villa, but I will see if I can pop it up here on SofaScore later on. We'll take a look at it. It's a lot different. So what we can see here is his heat map. He really, and this is why I feel that he's changed his game and he's playing a different game than he used to play previously. Is that his heat map really surrounds that center circle. And what I mean by that is he's shown a lot more discipline. He doesn't get involved in box to box running anymore. He covers that defense, that high part of the defensive third, that high part or that low part, if you want to call it, of the attacking third, and that's where he kind of focuses his ability. And I read a great scouting report on him on Total Football. What's it called? Total Football Analysis today. I read a great scouting report on him, and I read it after I watched it, and I could agree with an awful lot of what they said. Is that the reason that he did that was he wasn't ever tasked by Rob Edwards or for Luton this year of getting into the box, and the reason being is because his best attribute this year was being able to move that ball forward, whether it was a lovely pass, a lovely progressive slide rule pass forward, or whether it was just running out of trouble. He still has a trick in him. I think if you watch the Sheffield, is it not? I can't remember what game it was now, but he was out by the sideline and there was 2 people bearing down on him, and he just does a little kind of a step over, flicks it in between the 2 players, jinks in between the 2 of them, and makes a ton of space for himself. So he's seemed to learn that his intelligence with the football and the ability that he can play football. Ross Barkley, he's a ton of England caps. The big thing with him is that he's not this Olympic sprinter that can get up and down the field, that can get into the box and get out and slide in at the back post and then dust himself off and sprint back then if he doesn't get it to be back defending again. He's holding his position an awful lot more in the middle of midfield. And watching this and watching that or reading that scouting report, they highlighted his discipline in the middle of midfield is completely different than what they had seen or what he had shown when he played with Chelsea in a more attacking role, or in the latter part of his time in Everton when he was pushed up further forward. And certainly at his time at Aston Villa, I didn't ever see him hold his position. The only time I saw him hold his position was not track back and stand up alongside Ollie Watkins. And it goes to show that when you look at the statistics, that's what he was asked to do. But when we look at these statistics here and we look at it, we look at how he fares against the players that we have here. His defensive output isn't terrible. It's in and around the John McGinn of this world. Yeah, and we don't have any problem with John McGinn's defensive output. I'm pretty sure. Now, obviously, John McGinn's energy closes down players, presses players an awful lot more. They've taken away the metric on FBref for pressures, which is a beautiful metric and a metric I relied on heavily. And now we no longer have that on FBref, but we move and we try and find other different ways of looking at things. But the white line on this graph here is John McGinn. And we can see here Ross Barkley comes in and around the John McGinn level for the two tackling and interception pieces that I have in here, which is really good. Ball recoveries, Ross Barkley has recovered the ball at a brilliant clip over the course of this season. I think it comes in the 90th percentile. He has recovered balls. Now, he doesn't dive into tackles. He doesn't put his foot out and block balls. He doesn't intercept balls, but he's recovering balls in open play. And then what he does with it afterwards is where he's really come alive for Luton this year. And it's why he almost got picked for England squads this year, because he's become the master of the 15 yards in front of him being the only area he wants to look at. And I mean that in a good way. So when he gets that ball, if he needs to slide a ball 15 yards to a non-running person, he's getting his head up and he's doing it. Or if he needs to turn, take that ball forward and drive running forward through the center, he is doing that. I looked at his progressive runs. And I think if I remember rightly, over 50% of his progressive carries with the ball originated deep I won't say deep in his own half, but deep in midfield. And what I mean by that is right on the edge of the defensive third of the Luton defensive third. So he was picking the ball up there and he was driving at their midfield, who were trying to press high, breaking the lines and getting forward with them. And we can see there that he had a dribble, where is it there? The dribble success rate there of 63.6%, which put him in the top 84% of all ball carriers in Europe this year. So what I'm trying to say here is that while Ross Barkley might not be everybody's cup of tea, he found a couple of things he could do right at Luton. And one of those was attacking the middle of the field and running straight with the ball in the middle of the midfield. Yes, he was dispossessed 1.85 times per game, but the amount of dribble attempts that he had, it was also he dribbled one of the highest amounts of any midfielder in Europe this year. Any midfielder in Europe, almost 3.5 dribble attempts per game. And he was successful in 66.6% of those. So it obviously means if you dribble more, you're going to be dispossessed more, which means that metric here is a false low. It's a false 4% from that point of view, because it's almost, if you take it aside, it looks poorly, but when you look at the good things that he's done there, he's matriculating that ball way quicker and way faster than he's actually losing that ball as well. So he's focusing on those, it seems to be focusing on specific areas that are affecting the game, and we're driving Luton forward in their counter-attacking in their counter-attacking way. And you know, when you have a player that does this, and not only did he do that from those deep positions, as I said, about 60% of his progressive carries came from there. The other 40% came from just low on the attacking third. So he never burst his balls to get into the box, but what he was doing was driving at midfields, getting midfields on their back foot, driving at centre halves, getting them on their back foot. And the best way to break a low block is to run straight through it at times. It's not the only way, obviously. I know you can read books about what ways to break a low block, but we couldn't do it. And we were always going wide. Aston Villa were going wide more often than not. And Ross Barkley's strength this season was driving at the penalty area, driving at the up the middle of the field. Morgan Rogers is what has been brilliant at doing that since he's come in. Emery has loved that. I think Emery does want Rogers to move out into the left again, or maybe if he doesn't, maybe if Rogers is injured, he doesn't really have anyone that can carry that ball up the gut anymore. Ross Barkley might be somebody that can do that. Tielemans can't really carry that ball up the gut. He can slide the passes through, absolutely. He's got great progressive pass rate. We're going to take a look at it in a moment. Ross Barkley has a very good progressive pass rate. It's not as good as Yuri Tielemans, but it still is right up there with the John McGinn. It would be better than any player that we have on our team currently from a progressive pass rate. So if you look at everything to do with Ross Barkley, and you go back to 2015, 16 or whatever when he played with Everton, that's fine. You can do that. You can look at that whole package. But a 30-year-old Ross Barkley has changed his game, and I'm willing to wager this with a lot of people. He's changed his game, and he's a different player. Now, will it fit in? Will he be absolutely brilliant at Villa under Unai? You have to believe Unai sees something in this, because Unai is pressing for this as a transfer. But will he be absolutely brilliant? I don't know. But I can completely understand, and I can contextualize the reason that Barkley has changed his game. And I think that's worth talking about here prior to jumping to snap decisions based on age and stuff like that. And I want, for posterity's sake here as well, I'm about 65% on this transfer. I would prefer somebody a bit younger, but I can see reasons as to why this guy comes in based on the fact that I've watched the games that he's played and some of the people I've spoken to with Luton. And I will have a Luton fan come on to talk about, about what they feel about Ross Barkley as well tomorrow. So looking at this here, ball recoveries, successful dribbles, shot creating actions, just absolutely blows any of the rest of our midfielders. Our current midfielders this year, in the best year that midfield has probably ever played in an attacking sense for Aston Villa, Ross Barkley played better. Just did. But he did it in different areas of the field than some of our players did, which is what makes it more intriguing. Moving on here to Yuri Tielemans. Now, I wanted to show you how he stacks up against Yuri Tielemans. Now, once again, Yuri Tielemans was tasked with different roles, I think, for Aston Villa. And when we look at his tackle percentage here, or his tackles per 90, I look more into this with regards to where did he do that and what positions he was in. Yuri Tielemans' high press this year was incredibly underrated. When he played in that more elevated role, Yuri Tielemans' high press was actually really good, and it was one of those things that maybe didn't show on the screen, but it damn shows in the stat sheet. And stats are as valuable a piece of information as anything that you see on the field. And I'm understanding Tielemans when I say it didn't show on the field. Sheffield United, when we beat him 5-0, he was absolutely imperious at that. In Europe, he's been brilliant at chasing down. I can't think, but I know for a fact there's 2 or 3 other games where I wondered, or absolutely marveled that he's high press as well. But I can't remember exactly who they were against. So Tielemans has been really good. When we put somebody like Yuri Tielemans here, granted that he hasn't played as many games as Ross Barkley, obviously, because I'm trying to find out how many games he has played for Villa this year, Tielemans, just to put it into perspective. Yuri Tielemans played 46 games for Aston Villa this season. So he played more games than Ross Barkley this year, but maybe not minutes. I don't have the minutes calculated here at all. But we can see here that Tielemans was tasked with tackling an awful lot more, and he did, and he tackled at a better rate. Yeah, but the interception rates were absolutely exactly the same. Ross Barkley recovered more balls in open play than Yuri Tielemans did. And then when we look at successful dribbles, we look at shot creating actions there, we can see that Ross Barkley far outweighs anything Yuri Tielemans did this year with regards to that. And I'm saying this from the point of view that I think Tielemans had an absolutely super year. I think he had an absolutely brilliant year. And I'm not saying that Ross Barkley comes into this team and because he might not be as ball dominant or might not be a ball hog, or like he was at Luton. When I say that they were looking for him when he was playing with Luton. But the numbers paint a nice story from what this guy is able to do in a team that, I hope people won't mind me saying, has lesser talent than Aston Villa, but played the same level of competition and what I mean by that, the same level of competition for 38 games that Aston Villa did. we look at Yuri Tielemans' progressive passes are off the scale. I actually undersold it there where I put that orange line there. I think Yuri Tielemans had a ridiculous amount of progressive passes. And we can see that because he was the guy in our midfield that was driving that ball forward. And an incredibly underrated player this season as well, when you look back at an awful lot. I know Dan Bardell raves about Yuri Tielemans, and I think we should probably start talking more, I suppose, better about him as well from his playmaking ability. Like, the only man who can really slide a ball through in the low block was Yuri Tielemans. And potentially you get a Ross Barkley in here. His skill set of being able to break a mid block with his running ability, or slide a ball through a low block or a mid block with his progressive passing ability. Well, look, I'm not saying that he will be able to do it, but the statistics show that he did it for Luton this year, and Luton scored a decent amount of goals, and they look pretty decent doing it at times, especially in the latter half of the season. So I think that one is really interesting there as well with regards to Tielemans. And I'm all for having good footballers. I'm all having good functional footballers who can do jobs in certain areas and certain against certain opposition. I'm all for this, specifically as we will need to roll our squad a small bit more next season with regards to we can't have 4 or 5 players playing over 4,000 minutes next season in the Champions League and in the Premier League, like catching lightning in a bottle again a second time like that. I'm just not sure that it would be something that I will bet my money on doing, put it that way. The last slide I wanted to show here is Ross Barkley at Aston Villa in 2020-2021 and Ross Barkley at Luton in last season. And I think this to me paints the picture that I was saying about Ross Barkley's tasks at Aston Villa in 2020-21 in comparison to what Ross Barkley has remade himself into at Nice and subsequently at Luton, or what he's been asked to do and has done admirably. I think this paints a pretty picture, because the two are the three, I suppose, when you count recoveries in there as well. The three defensive statistics in there are very poor for Ross Barkley in 2020-2021, because he wasn't asked to do them. And if he was, he certainly didn't show that he could do them. But I think this past season he has shown that he can do them, and he has shown that he can be a bit more disciplined in midfield. He was also more of a ball carrier for Aston Villa. Like, outside of Jack Grealish, he was the only ball carrier we had, and at times in that season we were missing Jack Grealish. So, you know, it goes to show that he was probably tasked with being the only ball carrier we had in the team, when the only one who was able to properly do it within the team as well. Shot creating actions were an awful lot higher, but we can see here his pass attempts, his pass percentage, and his progressive passes. He's always been a progressive player, no matter where he's played and what team he's played at. He's just outdid his 2020-2021 statistics for Aston Villa for Luton this year. I wrote down a couple of notes as well that I don't know if I've gotten through. Yes, I didn't get through all these when I was speaking about him there. So when I was looking at him play for Luton this season, I'll take these stats off the screen here as I read these. I was looking at him play for Luton this season. As I say, I watched 4 of his games. I found that he was always that constant presence in midfield. And what I mean by that is that it wasn't that he always started. It was his positional discipline of staying in around that centre circle. 10, 15 yards back further in the centre circle, 15 yards further forward in the centre circle. And he marshalled that square around that centre circle. And he did it really well. And he's a big guy. He's 6'2", you know, so he stood out in the field when he does that, you know, because the ball wasn't passing him by an awful lot. Now, what I found as well is that he's out of possession. He seemed a lot more balanced than I remember him playing for Aston Villa. As I've mentioned about discipline more, he was positionally an awful lot disciplined. He knew when to hold his position. When players were coming against him, he was very aware of what was going on behind him, so that he didn't break the line and allow runners get in behind him, even in that intermediate level in midfield. He was pretty disciplined there, and didn't overexert himself. So specifically in that 2-man midfield that they played in Luton, and where they at times they could have left themselves very open, it was Ross Barkley that was tasked with shutting down any of the gaps there, and he moved linearly to do that, as opposed to trying to run towards players. He'd move linear, he'd block passing lanes, and that's where I got a lot of his recoveries from. You know, passing lanes were interrupted, the ball would go loose, he would recover it, and he would drive forward with the ball. Out when he was in possession, then he would go forward, but he'd only ever looked at that 15 yards, maybe 20 yards in front of him, as I said, and he knew his limitations with regards to his ball carrying. He carried it out of trouble and moved it on, as opposed to carrying it into trouble afterwards. Because he didn't commit himself into either box. I think that's where this comes from as well, where he's high ball recoveries and where he's able to regain the ball at either edge of the defensive third, as I said before, and the attacking third, allowed him to step in and create a high press and almost create a staggered high press for their midfield. And also then likewise as well, when they got into a mid or a low block, he was able to create that staggered mid or low block as well by not committing himself too early, which, Luton conceded a lot of goals this season, but their midfield always worked hard to get into position. And Ross Barkley certainly couldn't have been faulted for an awful lot of that from the games I saw anyway there. As I say, in attack, his big things, I did mention these, was ball carrier, real penetrating carriers, and he made distance. He made distance with his ball carrying, and he didn't overdo it from the point of view that he was consistently running down blind alleys. He ran straight. He ran up the gut of defenses and made midfielders get turned and made defenders get turned as well, which when we've had players running at other players this season, we've always done it in the wings, whether it's been Bailey, whether it's been Diaby, whether it's been Rodgers to start off. At the start of the year, we were running more centrally, and I think Unai Emery wants to get back to that. And as I say, he's got a player. We're linked with a player here who the two things that he does well is plays the ball through the center really, really well. Adeptly uses a trick to get away from people, knows his limitations, and just plays the ball, or did that for Luton anyway over the course of the last season, for sure. I'm just looking up one statistic here. I want to, his progressive carries rate was he would have 1.72 progressive carries per game, which to me is always pretty decent, because put him in the top third of players in the whole of Europe's top 5 leagues as well. I'm also looking to see what the distance was of his progressive carry distance. His total carrying distance per 90 minutes was 220 yards. And his progressive carry distance was 97 yards. So essentially that put him in the top 20%, top 30% of players in Europe's top 5 leagues. So the distance is what I wanted to show here, is that he wasn't busting a gut to do 60-yard runs. He was doing smart, safe, healthy, team healthy 15-yard progressions with the ball, and he was doing them quite a lot during the course of a game, almost twice a game. He was doing them, and he was doing them over that distance, should I say, and getting out of trouble and progressing his team up the field. Now, next thing is, does Ross Barkley sign for Aston Villa? I don't know. Does he do it? I can only go on what happens here. If he comes in, signs for Aston Villa, and what I've put in the table there, if he plays as that specific, that 100%, that dyed-in-the-wool number 8 that he played for Luton, I think that we think if he can show that discipline, and under Unai Emery, I think we'll have snagged the deal for a player coming off the bench for Aston Villa, or a player that can come in spot situations and start, or a player that can maybe play 46 games like Tielemans did and always feel like he was second choice, but really, really, really contributes to the team. I think we can have that. I think we can have that in him. A couple of people here asking, I just saw there, does this mean that Baina is off the cards? I don't think so, because Baina is definitely going to be a player that would play behind Ollie Watkins in this instance, or play wide off the left. I know we've got players who can play wide off the left already, but we will not be able to go out and play 30 games with the same 11 next year, or the same what we call them 5 attacking entities next season. We just won't, and we're going to need to mix and match and change it up. So like getting a smart signing like Ross Barkley, and if he turns out to be a free, even better. Maybe we go and we get a defensive midfielder that's a free as well, and that saves the funds then for maybe someone like Baina, maybe somebody like getting in a striker to play with Ollie Watkins, maybe getting a left back, maybe one if not both our left backs depart this season, and we get new left backs into the team. Maybe Diego Carlos goes. I don't really buy the Ronaldo Araujo links. I would love it if it did come in, because we'd finally have an aerial presence, somebody who can win the ball in the air, which is something we don't have since Tyrone Mings has left the team. Diego Carlos was exceedingly poor at winning the ball in the year this year, and it was one of the reasons why I kind of cooled in him personally as the year went on as a defender. ball at his feet, he was absolutely fine, no problem. But players running in behind him and balls over the top, he was a small bit lost in the ether in that aspect. He may be somebody who's going this season this off season. I said it at the start of the season that if there was one player that Aston Villa could probably let go, it would be him. And I'm not surprised to see that he's somebody that's been linked with maybe the exit door this off season. But we'll see. If he stays with the team, I will obviously support him. I think he seems to be a wonderful man, wonderful person, loved within the dressing room and stuff like that. And if we can't find an upgrade on him, I don't think that we need to sell him. But as I say, if there is upgrades to be gotten out there and we do sell players, well, then I'm all for that, and I believe it. I would prefer to sell a Diego Carlos and a Diego Carlos than to sell a Diego Carlos and a John Duran. I would prefer to almost sell the two of those than to sell a Jacob Ramsey, albeit I don't want to sell anyone. I know that we have to sell somebody, and don't jump down my throat for saying John Duran. I just get a feeling that maybe he is a saleable asset at this moment in time. He may go on to be one of the best strikers in the world, and we'll be kicking ourselves. It's not about his talent or his ability. I just think it's really probably where his head is and where the club's head is with him at the moment. But it'll be a big off season for John Duran, even if he does stay for Aston Villa, because I think he can contribute. You only had to look at the Liverpool game. That goal he scored from outside the box, not the ricochet. The other one was just a fantastic goal. Anyway, there's a couple of people there talking about wages for Barkley. He was on 30 grand at Luton apparently. He comes to Aston Villa, 30 years of age. You're not really, he's not going to be in the 60, 70, 80, 90 grade bracket of money. I just don't think that he warrants that. But look, we'll let the accountants worry about the money side of things, specifically with regards to contracts from that point of view. But let's see how this one progresses. I've told you how I feel about him over the last 35 minutes. You guys can pop whatever you want in the comments, as I say, because I know this one's going to cause an awful lot of debate, and I'm not here to tell anybody that they're wrong with regards to this. I'm just here to tell you what I saw, and I'm going to be back again tomorrow so that you guys can hear what a Luton fan saw, because he watched him over the whole lot of the season this year. I think that's a really, really good perspective to have. So if you join us tomorrow, I don't know what time I'm going to be putting it out. I'm actually a couple of you guys have put it up on Twitter. A couple of you guys, thank you so much for messaging me. I've been pretty ill the last couple of days, and I'm not feeling the greatest at the moment, but I'm going to try and rock a couple of these out anyway, as I feel in fits and starts when I feel a small bit better, just so that I'm not lying in bed all day and going stark crazy. So probably maybe around 10:45, 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. Keep an eye out for on YouTube and on Twitter. I'll be chatting to a Luton fan and getting their opinion on Ross Barkley over the last year at Luton. So thanks very much, everybody, for watching and for listening. As always, please thumbs up, please like the show, please subscribe to the show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, pop over to if you're watching this on Twitter, pop over to YouTube and give us a follow there as well. Subscribe there. It costs you nothing to do. And we'd really appreciate you being over there, because we don't always stream to Twitter. And if you're on YouTube and you don't follow us on Twitter, go over there and give us a thumbs up on Twitter and follow us there. Just spread the love around, because the more the merrier with regards to this. And it also kicks it in the algorithms to allow other Villa fans that maybe have never even heard of us, which there are bazillions, to come and join us as well. And we would love that, because it's going to be a huge off season. We're going to have a lot of new Aston Villa fans coming out of the woodwork, and I'm all for it. We're a massive tent, and we should embrace absolutely everybody who wants to be a Villa fan, and keep them an Aston Villa fan by showing them our love and our gratitude for the time that they spend with us through podcasts and so on. And I'm absolutely here for that. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to go off before my voice completely goes. Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. And all that's left to say is up the Villa.